Okay, week 5 fly tying class. We did the Goby pattern of the My Little Goby. And so we'll hop right in. Again, I think everybody did pretty good. There are some tricky bits, with tying this fly. There's some steps that have to go in the proper order. But yeah, we'll hop right in. So I'm going to start my thread way back, or right up at the eye. Unlike the previous fly where we tied our actual eyes in pretty far back, this one we're going to tie our bead chain eyes in pretty close to the front, because the only thing that needs to go in front of them is when we tie down our rabbit strip. So I'm going to tie these in using X wraps or cross wraps, or same way we did the lead eyes on the clouser. So again, I'm going to capture that, turn it over to the front. Again, I'm going from behind to in front. Then I'm going to switch, and I'm going to go from in front to behind, and when I pull on these, it'll straighten, and then you can always help it along a little bit. Once I get that nice and tight, I'm going to do my parachute style wraps where I go around the thread wraps. I'm going under the eyes, over the shank, and then when I pull tight, that really locks those in there. They're not going anywhere. Double check them, make sure they're even. And now I'm going to lay a thread base down so that my next material won't slip around on me. And I'm going to come right back up to the eyes, because again, this is a slippery material and I want to tie in quite a bit of it. And this is for our belly weight system. And this is braided line from conventional fishing. I believe this is 40-pound spider wire or something like that. And I'm just going to tie this in nice and tight all the way back to where the point of the hook is. And the reason we do that on this fly, we want the weight a little further back, again, so this fly drops flat and kind of glides across the surface when you strip it. So once I get that tied in, I'm just going to advance my thread behind it to where our tail's going to go on, and we're just going to leave this kind of out of the way. You can wrap it around these eyes just to keep it at bay for now. And our tail is going to be craft fur. This one is tan. Again, you can change the color of these if you're fishing a gray bottom. This one does pretty well with the grays and tans. If you're fishing a darker bottom, you can do olives, you can do really anything. They're bass flies, so they're not super picky. But I'm going to I pre-cut these for class. That's about what I want. A lot of this is going to go away because a lot of it's under fur, just like our bucktail. I'm going to cut that off the hide. And when I grab this in the middle and pull out all these little short fibers, I don't want those. You can save those if you want for dubbing, but I'm going to pull out most of those short ones. And now you'll see nice long wispy tapered tail. I don't want all of that. So I'm going to take, it's kind of hard to see with the background, but I'm going to take a lot of these long ones and restack them. I'm going to make them about the same length. And that's about perfect. And I'm going to measure this out to about two shank lengths. Not super long. We don't need it super long. I'm going to transfer that measurement, and then I'm going to grab it in my fingers, and I'm just going to cut most of that, the waist off, just to have a nice, pretty clean tie-in point. The key here, you don't want to tie down over this wire, and that's where these butts are going to end. So I'm going to do a nice loose wrap to capture all that, and then get a couple nice tight turns in. Craft fur is a pretty slippery material, so if you're not careful, it will roll, it will pull out of your thread wraps on you. I'm going to wrap back a little bit so that this kind of goes down. That's just going to help a little bit with fouling, but also when we put our rabbit strip on there, it'll help keep that where we want it. So now we're going to do our body, which in this case is just laser dub. We're using dark tan. We want a pretty chunky body, so you're going to use quite a bit of dubbing. If you want to, you could do a dubbing loop, just so that you can pick it out at the end and have it still be pretty darn durable. I'm just going to dub this as you would anything, normal dubbing noodle. And again, you're going to use quite a bit, and we want it to be thicker up by the eyes than we do down by the tail. We get that natural kind of taper going. And so we'll pull out a little bit of dubbing, get that on our thread. Maybe. The more dubbing you use, the harder it is to get it to go around your thread. So I'm right at that kind of almost too much. But I'm going to start wrapping this, pulling a little bit of thread here so I don't hit the camera. And it doesn't have to be super tight. Again, we're going to pick this out. We want it kind of buggy. And once I get up to this thread, I'm going to pull it back, and that's going to help kind of keep it up out of the way. Pull some more thread out, get some more dubbing on there. Started. There we go. Once you get it started, you can then tighten the noodle. Every couple wraps, I'm going to tighten. I don't want it too tight again, though, where I'm going to come in and pick this out once I get our weight on there. A little more dubbing here. Now, again, I want quite a bit of dubbing on here. It's going to help soak up water. It's going to help it sink. And again, by picking it out, it's going to give the illusion of a bigger profile. A little more body on this thing. So I'm going to do one more clump of dubbing. And I'm going to wrap back a little bit, tighten this up, come forward. I'm going to end right behind our bead chain eyes. Make a little space there, because now we're going to put on our weight, which are 5/32. These are gold beads. You can use brass beads. If you wanted to, you could even downsize or upsize and use tungsten. Again, you can augment the weight. This is what I typically use for 5 feet and shallower. It sinks pretty well, but again, it's not going to plunk. It's not going to plummet down. You can get some stealthy presentation from this. So I'm going to pull that tight and capture this right behind the eye, or the bead chain eyes. And I want these a little loose. I want these to be able to move around and click, make some noise. I'm then going to advance my thread in front of the eyes. You can see here it's in front of the bead chain. And I'm going to capture this again with 2 wraps. I'm going to fold it back over and I'm going to capture it for a 3rd time behind the bead chain eyes. This braided line is super slippery, so I just want to capture it a couple times, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Come in, you can glue that too if you want. I'm not going to. Make sure I get that nice and tight on there. And now we're ready to do our fins. I've seen flies like this done with, you know, feather fins up the side of the fly. You can wrap hackles to make fins. I use strung fuzzy fiber, and I'm going to tie this in. If you've ever seen a merkin crab, I'm going to X-wrap this right behind these bead chain eyes. The bead chain eyes are really just to create a little bit of a hydraulic so these fins don't collapse all the way down. And then also the imitation of the wider head with the eye way out to the side. So I'm just gonna take a nice clump, and just like these bead chain eyes, I'm gonna X-wrap behind these bead chains, right up next behind, right behind them. So 2 wraps one way. You can see it's kind of at an angle. I haven't used a bunch of pressure yet, so I can straighten these. And I'm going to come in the opposite direction and capture that twice. And before I pull tight, I'm going to manipulate these. I'm going to pull both of them and flatten it. So when you look at it this way, it's nice and flat. You know, they're coming straight out the sides. And then once I make sure I have it where I want it, you can even tip it a little bit towards you because it is going to want to roll. I'm going to pull nice and tight. Don't be afraid to maneuver this material and keep it where you want it. I'm going to put a couple wraps in front of the eye just to lock everything that I just did in. Move my thread back behind the eyes. Now, one thing I found with this material, when you X-wrap it, it wants to stay clumped together. I want these a little more flared out, like fins. So what I do is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to spin it to cord it, just to make sure no loose threads catch this material. And I'm going to split my strung fuzzy fiber pretty much right down the middle, and just make a little area. And you're going to catch a couple, but you can always come in with your fingers and grab those. And I'm essentially going to X-wrap again through the middle of these fibers. And you can wiggle and pull, and they'll split around your thread. But what that does, see how that made that nice and wide? It's just helping me get the profile I want. This far side is the trickier side. For whatever reason, it's always a little more tricky. So I'll get that through there. Again, nice and loose. Grab any fibers that might have stuck to your thread. Get a second one going here. See, I've got some fibers that caught. Take your time with this. I mean, we're not commercially tying. We don't have a deadline to hit. Get it nice and tight. Advance our thread in front of our bead chain eyes to lock all that in. And And there we go. We have some nice fins. And they stay pretty well out there. See how wide those are? Once we get our rabbit strip on, those will look pretty sweet. So now I'm going to invert my fly. If you don't have a rotary vise, you'll obviously have to take your hook out. We're gonna take our rabbit strip here. This is a grizzly color, which is kind of gray at the bottom, tan, with some barring on it. Really nice color. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay this on here, and I want these rabbit fibers just a little bit longer than my tail fibers. I'm just gonna place that there and get a visual for where I need to poke the leather on my hook here, which is right at my thumb. So I'm gonna reach in right in the middle of that strip, poke through, make sure it poked through, and then I'm gonna grab my fly. I'm gonna take it out. I'm gonna push this down so that I can get a clean grab with my vise. Once we do that, we can grab the front of this rabbit strip, and when you pull on it, it will pull the rabbit strip down and back. And that's just about perfect. So the only thing we have left to do is preen these fibers, make sure they're all on top. I'll turn this so you guys can see the top. I'm gonna hold those down. Get a wrap over the top of the rabbit strip, a couple of them. Pull tight, make sure you get good tension. We don't want that rabbit strip going anywhere. I'm then gonna pull this up, get a couple wraps in front of it, and then with a nice sharp pair of scissors, I'm gonna come in and get rid of that rabbit strip. And then all we have left to do is to cover up that little bit of hide. I'm just gonna pull all of this back and start wrapping some thread. Now, if I come in front of that rabbit strip and pull back with my thread, I got a little close to the eye, I can clean that eye up. I'm gonna wrap back to the bead chain eyes. Just make sure everything's nice and tight. Pull out a little bit of thread here. Grab my whip finish tool. Do a 4 to 5 turn whip finish. Tighten. And cut our thread off. Now the only thing we have left to do is to trim these fins. These are obviously way too big. I like to do this out of the vise. So I'm gonna take this out and I'll try to show you as I'm doing it here. Bear with me. So these guys, when I make this cut, I'm gonna angle my scissors back towards the end of the fly. And I like to come out, so this is 2 bead chains. I'm gonna come out another 2 bead chains roughly and angle my cut again, straight, angled back towards the tail of the fly. And I'm gonna have to turn this over. Again, we've got 2 bead chains, 1, 2, and then right back towards the tail of the fly. Got a couple stragglers here. And basically, you're done. It's a pretty quick, easy fly. Big thing though is when you look at it from the top, it has that wide head, wide profile up front, narrows down in the back, and this thing will glide across the bottom. All right, that's the My Little Goby.